Yes, it's the Finnish Football Show. Welcome back again. It's becoming a weekly get-together. I'm Mark Wiltshire from Explore Finland. I'm joined again today, as usual, by Rich Nelson from Escape to Suomi. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
By Keke Muleri from Keke Muleri. Hi, Keke.
Terve.
And Mark Hayton from FC Suomi. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
With Finland qualifying for Euro 2020, there's naturally been a surge in interest in our Huuhkajat. The Finnish Football Show team has been invited to speak and write on a variety of outlets around the world. And this made us think that no one really knows much about Finnish football, really. So Rich suggested it might be a good idea to go back to basics a little bit for this episode by creating a kind of Finnish football 1.0 reference for people, one place to get all that useful info as we head into the Euros, because we've been at this now for several years and we know stuff. Well, these guys know stuff and I'm kind of picking it up as we go along. Rich, you very kindly put together the agenda for today, so I'm gonna take us through it and let you guys kind of do the heavy lifting as per usual for the last 5.5 years, really. The first thing you suggested, and why don't we do this in order of seniority? Who's been banging on about Finnish football for the longest out of you and Mark?
I started doing this in 2012.
Mark?
Yeah, I think I knocked up the first website at about 2014.
You Johnny come lately.
So yeah.
All right, Rich. So why don't you just give everyone a bit of an overview of who you are? And we did a whole episode on kind of how we came together back in 2020. So but let's give a little introduction who we are first of all and why we're doing this.
So my name's Rich Nelson. I first went to Finland in 2008. My wife, or now wife, is Finnish, and my first game was in 2008. I saw KuPS from Kuopio lose at home to Honka of Espoo, and kind of despite the defeat, a love affair was made, and it became very much the hobby while we were over there that I had my own thing to do rather than sit in other people's houses, smile and drink their coffee. And it was a way of bonding with sort of family members and making my own friendship groups over there. And it was one of those things where once you got back from Finland, I couldn't really find out what was going on. Twitter was in its infancy and websites were on and off, and World Soccer's 2 or 3 weeks out of date. So I just thought, well, okay, if I can't work out what KuPS are doing, I'll do it myself. Escape to Suomi was born. Originally, it was entirely a website and a bit of social media. The website is it's still alive in an archive form now, but I used to do a lot of interviews. I used to have, I think for 2 years, I had the exclusive rights to the match highlights, which was how low key things were back then. Now there's a full centralized contract, and I just got every Sunday night, I'd get sent the web code to the video that I could upload to my site. So things have changed a lot in the last few years, but now pretty much exclusively on Twitter and this podcast. So it was the 9-year anniversary of Escape to Suomi this week, actually. So yes, I'm 9, halfway to drinking.
Many happy returns. Mark, who are you? What are you, and why?
That's a pretty deep question for like 5 minutes into the podcast. So I'm Mark Hayton. I've been in Finland I moved to Finland in 2004. I think my first Finland game was around the same time. So about 2005. I watched us beat I think it was Macedonia 5-1. So it was like I was missold a bad bill of goods, because I think I turned up and I thought, and we won 5-1. Forss scored twice. Tihinen scored. I think Litti didn't score. But he played. So you watch this Finland team in 2005 that was just full of like household names that nobody seemed to know about, who was smashing teams 5-1. And I thought, oh, here we go. This will do all right. And very much like Rich, football was one of the easiest ways or the best ways for me to help integrate into Finnish lifestyle, because the Finns are, as we all know, not exactly a talkative bunch. So it's always good to have a common subject to discuss. And then so over a couple of years and a couple of jobs, I did various stuff getting into Finland. And then in 2013, 2014, I noticed that I had a bunch of mates that lived in cities where Finnish players were playing. So I had friends in Poland, in Holland, in southern Germany, and we thought, well, we can actually start now, kind of like putting together reports on Finnish players abroad and how they're doing. Because actually, one of the things that we noticed is that every time we turned up to a Finland game, most people could name about 10 players, and then everybody else, the likes of the guys who were playing in the German third division or in Poland, nobody knew anything about. So we set up a website called FC Suomi back then to try and report on just Finns abroad, and then their general association with the national team. And that grew and blossomed and grew. And then I met you fine gents also further along the way, and we started having this much fun.
Yeah, we did. Maybe I'll jump in there, because it was when I moved to Finland in 2008, but I wasn't living here full time at the time. I was kind of traveling around quite a bit for work, and then got to work for the same company from home, based here in Finland. So I guess it was really 2013 that I started to live here permanently, and had this idea about starting a podcast and started the Explore Finland radio show. That was at the end of 2015. And after about a year, I think, Mark, you reached out to me and said, hey, there's me and Rich, we've been thinking, would you be interested in starting a podcast about Finnish football? And that was where that all started. And in many ways, we were pioneers. We were recording this show online. We've used all manner of streaming programs over the years, but we started doing this online right from the beginning, like 5.5 years ago. And it wasn't so easy then, but we've stuck with it, and the world has caught up. So I'm of same thing, Finnish wife. We moved to Seinäjoki, to her hometown. I now have a different wife who I can just hear coming through the door. You can probably all hear just coming through the door, and kind of settled here and getting into the football and watching SJK Seinäjoki was the way that I started to make friends over here for myself. So slightly different way, but similar kind of story. So we've been making Finnish Football Show for 5.5 years together, and Explore Finland radio show is still going. There's other bits and pieces that I'm sort of involved with as well. Okay, we kind of first heard from you as a listener to the show, but what else have you been doing? What's your connection with Finnish football?
Well, much like Rich, I'm still based in England. Guess what? I have a Finnish wife. She's from Jyväskylä. And similar to Rich, we used to hop over to Finland, especially before the kids. You could just jump on Ryanair, get a flight, and pop over for the weekend. Almost, it was that. It seemed like it was that easy. And rather than get dragged around the same friends to hold the same babies again and again, I decided I need some of my own mates. So
there is only so much coffee you can drink on these days, isn't there? Exactly. I felt the pain when Rich said it.
And in a nation of coffee drinkers, someone who doesn't like coffee and asks for a chocolate milk, it gets a bit embarrassing. So I made my way down to Jyväskylä, who were actually in the top division in the Veikkausliiga back then. So Heidi days, and saw the nutters at the back of the stand clapping and singing, and thought they're the ones for me. Just made my way up there and told them my story. I'm English. I'm into this. Mind if I join you? And firm friendships were forged that night, and continue to this day. So sort of went on from supporting JJK and seeing them whenever I could over the summer to following the Finland national team with my mates from Jyväskylä, and also meeting all the other regulars from the SMU core who go to every single game. So similar stories to you guys. And I just think, like you said, it's Finnish football, which may not be the case going forward. Up until now, has sort of been like an exclusive club. What with hockey being the sort of number one sport over there, the rest of society sort of maybe looks at you as a bit of a freak if you're a football fan. But that might not be the case going forward.
No, let's hope not.
Mark. Keke, you just mentioned that Ryanair flight. Was it the Ryanair flight that got into Tampere?
Yeah, that's the one.
Right, I reckon at least twice, probably more. But when I was a kid, I used to take that flight back to see my family in Newcastle and then come back out. At least twice when we landed, the whole airport blew a fuse when they put the heavy bags on that conveyor belt. There would have been about, I don't know, there must have been just some dodgy tractor engine powering the whole bloody place, because it was an aluminium shack. But at least twice when I landed in that airport, the fuse went when they put bags on that conveyor belt.
Okay, so if we're doing Ryanair to Tampere stories, my first 3 years with my family here in Finland, my job was still in the UK and I was commuting every weekend. So I reckon I did about 47 weekends a year of commuting. So that place became like a second home. It got to the stage where like the staff working at the airport, you weren't quite on first name terms, but it was certainly like a cheery wave, like a greeting an old friend as you went through. And the mad thing was that they were the first weekend we did it, I was dropped at the airport. We'd had a couple of weeks here, dropped to the airport, went back, and I was standing in the queue. I saw all these other people and they were like rocking up to the queue to board and all like, patting each other on the back. How you doing? How was your weekend? And I was like, oh my God, there are others like me. I'm not the only lunatic. This might just work. And there were people that became friends, like traveling friends for those few hours on the flights. I wouldn't recommend it, but it was quite interesting period of my life. Let's say that. So those are our credentials. Why don't we have a run through the key players that we've got in the squad at the moment? Rich, you listed 4 particularly, but if anyone wants to jump in with any others, but we've got Lukas Hradecky, Tim Sparv, Glen Kamara, and Teemu Pukki. They're probably the names that people will mostly recognise outside of Finland. But why don't we go through and should we take one player each or something like that?
Yeah.
So why don't you start then, Mark? Who do you want to take?
Well, if I'm going to start, then I guess you have to start with Pukki because I mean, Pukki's been a journeyman for the majority of his career, and he's always been that potential that struggled to live up to the hype. When he first came on the scene, they gave him the number 10 shirt straight away, and basically everybody said, okay, this kid's going to be the next Lippmanen, and put all the weight on his shoulders. And it took him a fair amount of years to get used to that responsibility. And I think it wasn't until he went to Brøndby where he learned how to basically close down as a striker, to press from the front and to run, cover proper distances, it was only then that he started to really improve his game. Coming into the tournament, he's the guy. If you look at how we qualified, we qualified with 1-0, 2-1, 2-0, really tight margins, really tight score lines at the back. And invariably it was Pukki sticking it in at the other end that made the difference for us. I think if we're going to get anything out of the upcoming group stage, it'll be on Teemu to deliver the goals. Luckily, he's in a fantastic run of form. And he's had a lovely break enforced by a minor injury, but he shouldn't be too stressed. He's had a bit of a rest. He looked all right when he came on against Estonia, and he should be raring to go.
And I'm not sure if I read it or heard it. I've been listening to a lot. I'm reading a lot of stuff that Rich has been doing over the last week or so. He's been a busy boy, but the partnership that Pukki has with Robin Lod could be really important for Finland if they can get it together.
Well, I mean, basically every team that plays us is going to come at us. You know, I think everybody's going to look at Finland as the team they have to beat above all else, and that should leave him a lot of space in behind. And that's exactly where he's perfect, on the counter attack, off the shoulder, looking for the through balls that the likes of Lurd and Taylor can make to get him in behind. And if they can just get him into that one-on-one situation, you know, 9 times out of 10 he'll find the back of the net.
Is it unfair to say that he needs a few chances to set his sights in a game?
I mean, you know, I think it all depends on his form. I mean, like I said, when we went through qualifying, you know, I think every sort of major chance, the clear-sighted goal that he had, he stuck away. I think, you know, yeah, he does go through those patches, you know, where he sort of struggles to find a bit of form. But if he's in form, he's a quality guy.
Absolutely. Rich, who would you like to speak about?
Well, I'll talk about Tim Sparv, the captain. He's a very interesting man. He's quite outspoken in his way. He's very happy to speak about a lot of things that either aren't football related or may touch upon football in some way. He talks about politics, the environment, education, the importance of travel and widening your horizons.
He even reads books.
I know, it's weird. I mean, there's been a campaign from the Finnish FA in the last few months to get more kids reading. Pukki's got a book. I mean, it's called Teemu Pukki Baby. And him and Sparv have been doing the equivalent of the CBeebies bedtime stories on YouTube, where they read for a couple of minutes a kid's story, either a new one or an old one. He's had a very nomadic career as well, a bit like Pukki. He was in the youth side at Southampton in the same team as Gareth Bale and Theo Walcott that got through to the FA Youth Cup final. I think they lost, was it 2006 or 5? Since then, he's been all around Europe to I would say the minor leagues, but he's been to clubs that you think are quite interesting. He's been to Groningen in Holland, Greuther Fürth in Germany, Midtjylland in Denmark. He's just left his club AEL in Greece. But he kind of came to prominence. I think there was an emphasis on when I think he'd just gone to Midtjylland, and the whole Moneyball thing was, and data analytics was becoming a popular thing. Obviously the film and the book had been done. And he was seen as this perfect Moneyball signing because he was, I think the thing referred to him as the no stats all-star, in that he was so good at reading the game that while his sort of particular statistics weren't outstanding, it was the stuff that he does off the ball that's so good. He's now 34 and very much the captain's side. He's not played a lot in the last 6 months because of injury, but his role in the team and in the squad is now more about what he gets out of other people. Glen Kamara flourished in the qualifying campaign playing along Sparv. Sparv provides this quality base at the back of midfield, sort of anchoring, taking the ball and playing it to people who can do better and can run more. Again, like Pukki, we don't know what exact physical shape he's going to be. But I mean, he wrote a piece in The Guardian last Saturday. That's the kind of thing he does. It actually made me go out and buy the paper for the first time in a long time. But, you know, and they're not, you know, he says they're not there to make up the numbers. You know, his dream was to captain Finland. And despite being a massive Manchester United fan, we don't hold that against him, even though he did score against them for Midtjylland in the Europa League. But, you know, his English is better than mine. He's so open about this is his sort of career-defining moment at 34. He's finally leading the team out. I mean, he's got 80 plus caps. I think he's got 1 goal for Finland. But, you know, if he leads the team out on Saturday or in any of the 3 group games, you kind of think, you know, that's for what he's gone through and for the journey he's taken. This is just such a massive, massive deal for him personally, but as a representative of Finland.
Okay, how do you feel about talking about Lukas Hradecky?
Yeah, I can. Just before I go on to that, I just wanted to say on Rich's point about Tim Sparv, you see these banners unfurled at Premier League grounds, captain, leader, legend, and I just think that's the sort of banner that would suit Tim Sparv perfectly for Finland. Do you know what I mean? Like, not just a throwaway comment. That sums him up completely. But yeah, moving on to Lukas Hradecky. I mean, what can you say? He's serious when he's on the pitch, but off the pitch, he's a barrel of laughs. I mean, we had him ourselves. We were lucky enough to get Lukas onto our podcast for a chat, and yeah, he was having a beer with us and pulling on the owl mask and all sorts. But yeah, on the pitch, fantastic. He had a little injury to the back end of this season, but made his way back into the Bayer Leverkusen side, and no surprise that their form returned to them when Lukas was back in nets. I mean, he was at Brøndby in Denmark. Before that, he was at Esbjerg in Denmark. So he's familiar. He'll be back on familiar territory when the Euros kick off for us in Copenhagen. But I just think he inspires. I mean, we've spoken in previous episodes about the strength in depth we've got currently with the goalkeepers. But I just think with Radetsky behind him, it just inspires confidence throughout the team. His statistics are outstanding. He's in great form for club and country, and yeah, I just think, and he's one of the others who I really think will go a long way to inspiring this team. You know, like a lot's been said about the team spirit around the Huuhkajat, the sort of club side feel to the national team, and I think that Lukas is one of those who'll really make sure that the lads are fired up for Saturday. He was recently on the BBC World Football podcast as well. He's second time on there, I believe, where he was chatting away and he was saying that he's actually the dressing room DJ. So yeah, he'll be sticking on a few inspiring tunes and leading the team into battle on Saturday. So yeah, what else can you say?
Then nothing, and I'll move on to talk a little bit about Glen Kamara, because I think many of us that follow UK football saw him coming through the ranks at Arsenal and then not quite getting much of a run in the team. I think he had one or two games and then went out on loan at certain places. And there was a podcast released this week in Finland, but done in English, where Glen Kamara was talking for, I don't know, 45 minutes or something like that. And it was really interesting to sort of hear him talking, and it went to some quite deep subjects. And of course there was the sort of on-field racist incident recently, which he talked about. And I'll put a link into the blog post that goes with this, where everyone can listen to it, because it's well worth it. But on the field, I think seeing him grow into the player that I guess we hoped he would grow into. Rich, you said about his sort of partnership with Tim Sparv, and I think he does a bit of everything, doesn't he? He's back there winning the ball, he's driving forward with the ball, and passing and finding his teammates. I love watching him play. You sort of, if you keep an eye on him, just seeing how much of the play goes through him when he's on form, he's really important there. And I think it was it Antiniemi when we interviewed him last year, who said the only thing missing from his game is scoring goals, and he just doesn't ever seem to really pull the trigger. You think, go on, do it now. So I'm hoping that he can maybe cap off his Euros and an incredible year winning the league in Scotland with Rangers with a goal at the Euros. That would be quite something, wouldn't it? Anyone got anything to add to what we've said about these players?
Regarding Camara, I saw he played one game for Arsenal, one senior game, a League Cup game at Sheffield Wednesday, and it was a boy in a man's team against a strong Sheffield Wednesday team who won 3-0. The difference between him, and I saw him play away to Fulham in the academy a couple of times when Jesse Jorinen played for Fulham, and again, sort of seeing him, he looked like most of these Arsenal players who don't stay with the club. He has all the technique in the world, but had no experience. He was playing a boy's game. He then went to Dundee. I mean, he has several loans, I think, a Colchester, Southend. He went to Dundee and then to Rangers, where he's become a man. He's playing senior football in a tough, tough league, and he's thriving, absolutely thriving. And I think we noticed in the Nations League games this time round in the autumn of 2020, when he gets the ball now, he turns to goal. He's not always, I think before he was kind of looking to keep possession at all costs, but now he's actually, when he receives the ball, he's already kind of looking towards the goal. And the game, I think it was away to Ireland. At the end of the game, they put a highlights compilation of just what he did and some of the things that he was doing, and whether Stephen Gerrard's been coaching him a certain way, I don't know. But it's the sort of thing that we're not used to seeing. We're used to functional midfielders playing for Finland, and he's come along and he's doing something different. He's brought his experiences with him, and he's still a young guy. Potentially, could be in the team for 10 years. He's really, really good. Keith.
Yeah, I was just going to say I don't know if it's got anything to do with him. For those who don't know, obviously, Glen was living in Finland for the first few years of his life, and then he moved with his mother to London, which is where he obviously came to the attention of Arsenal. And I just wondered to myself, I think he's the closest that we've got to what we might determine as a street footballer. Some of those close skills that he has with the ball. Keeps the ball under control, close to his feet, and all the turns that he does. And I just don't know if that's maybe comes out of growing up on the estates of London, just honing his skills in the sort of the tennis courts and the alleyways of the estates there. So, but yeah, I've said it before in this podcast. I think he's a Rolls Royce of a footballer, and that's the best way I can describe him and his achievements for Rangers in Scotland. I mean, I really enjoyed the Paloquero interview that you mentioned, Mark. Obviously, they did touch on the racist incident. Yanni Oevio asked Glen some difficult questions, and Glen was big enough to answer them. I do now seriously think that even though those questions do need to be asked, I do now think that Glen has and deserves to be able to put that incident behind him. And I think that one particular incident maybe has shoved him to the forefront of people's consciousness more than his football. But just wait until these Euros kick off, and it'll be the football that they're talking about, I think.
Yeah, quite right. Let's have a look at, and I'll put links to our interviews that we've done with some of the people we've mentioned, and also to that interview with on the Supla platform, so that everyone can take a listen there. There's some of the established and the key players, but there are some coming through. We've got Robert Taylor, who's of course Finnish, born and raised in Finland, but with an English dad. There's Daniel O'Shaughnessy, who's also born and raised in Finland, but with an Irish dad. There's Onni Valakari, and there's Marcus Forss. Mark, we haven't heard from you for a while. Pick a player and tell a little bit about him.
Onni Valakari's dad played for Derby County and in Scotland, if I remember correctly.
Onni was born in Scotland, wasn't he?
I think so. Yeah, I think he was while Simo was up there. And if for those that aren't familiar with him, you might want to get yourself a copy of the highlights of Finland 2, France 0 from late last year, late 2020. In that game, he was the key to turn sort of Finland's counter-attacking, sort of pack the box, low block defensive style into something that could really hurt the bigger teams. It looks like Onni's probably not going to get a starting berth. I think that he'll be brought on most likely as an impact sub in place of somebody like Robert Taylor. But for me, there is magic in that kid's boots. He's really light on the ball. He can shift his weight really quickly. He can still shield the ball, and he wins tackles and penalties. He wins free kicks and penalties relatively frequently. He's only been around the national team, I think, for about 6 months to a year, so not very long. And I think he's in his early 20s, so he's not exactly a senior player yet, but he's got bags and bags of potential. And I think he could absolutely be one to watch because he's got a habit of ripping the pins out every now and again.
Ripping the pins out?
Yeah.
That's not a football term that I've ever come across before in all my 40-something years.
Well, you know when you absolutely leather it,
Okay.
and you take the net and rips the pins out. You've never, Mark, you're telling me you've never ripped the pins out?
No, I most certainly have not.
Not on a football pitch.
No, I played Sunday football up until the age of 30, and I scored a handful of goals. So few goals that I can probably remember every one of them. And some of them even managed to get all the way across the line and hit the back of the net as well. There was that kind of power. Hot shot Hamish, I was not. Keke, who would you like to talk about from that little list?
I mean, to be honest, I'd like to talk about all of them, but one bloke who I really want to give a mention, who I've championed on our podcast before, is the beast Onni Valakari. I mean, this guy, I just think, I don't know if there's something about him when he pulls on the blue and white of Finland or what, but I can't get enough of him. Just the power, the strength, the passion that he plays with. He's not scared to go up. He's not scared to go up against anybody. And he's until recently he's been plying his trade in the Danish second division. He was with Esbjerg and they were sadly relegated year before last. But he's just announced that he'll be leaving them now. So we'll wait and see where he pitches up after the Euros. But when he plays for the national team, he's absolutely something else. He chips in with goals. You know, I've nicknamed him the Beast because I just think he's a monster of a man. I mean, I really want to meet him. I really want to get him on the podcast and we can have a chat with him and see what he's like as a person. But to look at him, especially, I can't decide if he's scarier with a shaved head or with the long hair. Do you know what I mean? He's just like he's just, and I just think going up against some of these other nations, when they look around in the tunnel and see Valakari, I just think he'll put the fear of God into them. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. I can't wait to see what he can do.
That's all true, and that's all well and good, but he was not on either of our lists of players that we were going to talk about. So would you like to talk about Robert Taylor, Daniel O'Shaughnessy, or Marcus Forss?
Okay, sorry. I'll go with Robert Taylor because he's from my adopted hometown of Jyväskylä. As you've said, his dad's from England. Robert had a bit of a football journey, not dissimilar to Glen Kamara, really. You know, sort of around the academy system and all that. He pitched up at some lower league English teams. I mean, I'm not sure if it was important for Robert to try and make it in the English game. Due to his connections and his heritage, but it was really when he came. He had a spell at Nottingham Forest where his dad was also a player for a little while. Lincoln City, he had a spell there, and it wasn't until he came back to Finland and started playing regularly in the men's team at Huuhkajat that he started to really sort of develop and progress. He had a fantastic season or so there. Then got his move. He's now in Norway, and doing decent things. I mentioned in a previous episode that SK Brana not doing so well at the start of this season, but Robert can be pleased with his own form, and similarly to Valakari, he's a skillful player. He's not shy of a free kick. He's again, maybe not so much as a street footballer, but he's very, very skillful. I mean, I'm sure he could do about 8,000 keepy uppies. Do you know what I mean? He's one of them sort of footballers. But yeah, again, excited to see what he can bring to the table.
And Rich, who would you like to talk about now?
I'll talk about Dan O'Shaughnessy.
Okay.
He's an interesting one again on the topic of particularly Rob Taylor, when these teams get read out and people see O'Shaughnessy, and especially when he played twice against Ireland last year. He and his brother Paddy, just to make him even more Irish, they both were developing at the same time in sort of clubs in Finland. Paddy, his career kind of went off I think at one point he was looking like the more promising prospect. he's now playing lower level in Finland. But Dan, he went to Metz in France. He spent some time in England. He was at Brentford and on loan at Cheltenham. He was at Midtjylland as well in Denmark. And he's come back to HJK in Helsinki, and he's really established himself as a quality central defender. He's the only Finland-based player in the squad. He's the only Veikkausliiga player to have ever been named for European Championships. And he's likely to start, because now Finland are playing with 3 central defenders at the back where they didn't before. Juno Toivio, Palasarjuri are going to be there, but now O'Shaughnessy is going to be almost certainly the third in that 3-man midfield. He played most of the games in the Nations League. Like the other 2, he's quite good going forward. He's younger, he's a bit quicker. He's pretty good on the ball. Again, not having with the other 2 was such a dynamic pair. They were quite tenacious and really hard to kind of get between and separate. Adding him to the mix, it certainly gives more benefits in terms of coverage. But they've got more to do now, playing usually behind wing backs. But his old man was from Galway, which is hence the name, and growing up in Finland. But there was an incident recently. He was talking on another podcast about how when he was at Cheltenham, he got caught up in an incident which ended up getting arrested and taken to the police and spending a night in the cell down in Cheltenham. But his English girlfriend wasn't pleased, but they're still together. I think they're engaged now. But he's definitely, despite the name, he's definitely Finnish.
And you were all very kind to leave Markus Forss for me, because I got to see a little of him playing the year and a half ago. He was on loan for half a season from Brentford to Wimbledon, which is my team in the UK. So I got to see him play a little bit, and he was young. It was exciting to see, especially from my perspective. This is Finnish football and Wimbledon combined together, and he scored. He came into the team and scored some goals, and scored some important goals. And for a club that has struggled around the bottom of League One for the last 5 years, and still again this season, he was there scoring goals. He looks powerful. He likes to sort of get through on the break, and no better example than his debut goal for Finland, which was on the break from a very long way, running through on goal and just calmly sort of stroking the ball, driving the ball high past the goalkeeper. It was ridiculously calm, and he seems to have just built on that. I mean, on the Wimbledon sort of Facebook groups, people are still looking back and saying, hey, his goals helped, really helped keep us up that year. He won vital points for us, and he sort of took that experience. I think the second half of that season he was injured, and then he went back to Brentford. And as we've talked about before, he played a regular role for Brentford last year, albeit perhaps a sub, coming on as an impact sub. And I guess looking at Finland's forwards for the Euros, if all of them are fit, he's probably an impact sub then. But for, like with Valakari, 2 players that sort of burst onto the scene against France, to be impact subs at the Euros is no shame at all. I'm looking forward to just seeing those guys sort of continue to develop. He's it's another exciting one for the future.
So people are listening in England will start seeing a bit more of Markus Forss, because obviously Brentford have just been promoted to the Premier League through the playoffs. Forss popping up with the third goal in their semi-final second leg to sort of cement their place at Wembley. So for English-based listeners, keep an eye out for Markus in the Premier League next season. I mean, as you said, Mark, he's a young lad, but he's obviously well grounded in his interviews. He speaks really well, but he's he might be young, but he's a big boy. He's not afraid to use his strength, and he's got plenty of it. So look out for him.
Rich.
Well, yeah, because again, his granddad was an international footballer, wasn't he? And Markus was picked as the athletics kind of. They did a group of 60 young players to watch over the Euros, and Marcus was the only one who made it from the Finland squad. But looking at him as a centre forward and looking at his strengths and weaknesses, a lot of it was numbers based. His goals per minute ratio and everything as a predatory centre forward. He doesn't do a lot in keeping possession. He doesn't do a lot of some of the other stuff. But as a penalty box player, that was what they were pointing out, his skills. And there were some rumours, I think about a year ago, when Dortmund were kind of exploring picking him up as, I don't know, the next Erling Haaland. But he's definitely, I think, the brightest and the one who's likely to make the biggest difference if he comes off the bench.
You mentioned predators, Rich, and that leads us on very nicely to the story behind the nickname for the Finland team. Now, there was a video that went out just a few days ago from the Palloliitto, the Finnish Football Association. So I'll put the link there in the notes. It's a 6-minute documentary, if you like, or interview and archive footage about how Finland came to get its name. And it's worth watching, especially when you hear this story. Rich, go on, tell what happened.
So it was a Euro 2008 qualifier in June 2007. Finland were at home to Belgium. It was a Saturday evening. Finland were managed by Roy Hodgson at the time, and it was one of those games that, Finland then had a history of kind of getting near to qualifying for major tournaments, and this was a big game. It was, I think, about 35,000 in the stadium, and after about 16 or 17 minutes, a large, makes me sound like Attenborough, a Eurasian eagle owl descended into the stadium and decided to park up on the pitch.
Showed off, basically.
Well, it did. He was sort of preening in front of an adoring fans. And the referee was Mike Riley, who most English fans will recognise. And the owl then flew onto one crossbar and then went on to the other one and basically lauded it around the stadium for, I think it was 6 or 7 minutes before the game was eventually restarted. Within 5 minutes of the restart, Jonathan Johansson scored the opening goal. It was a nice little finish. And in the second half, Alexei Eremenko Jr. scored an even nicer second goal. And the fact that Finland won this game 2-0, 2 great goals. The owl was adopted as the mascot. It was nicknamed Bubi. And since then, Finland have been known as the Huuhkajat, which is Finnish for eagle owl. And it's interesting that, a lot of countries have their names. These nicknames have come from years. There's the Free Lions, there's the Red Devils of Belgium. There's all these things that have come from generations of use. And not many of them, I can think, have come from an animal on the pitch. Had Finland lost the game, no one would have remembered it. It would have been one of those humorous things you see on a viral YouTube video. But as it is, it's become, a symbol of the team. The physical, the man in the suit is an owl. Everything about it, the marketing is, it's become very good around it. But to have that as your adopted mascot, and this was a majestic animal, and it would just look absolutely fantastic. And watching these videos again at the weekend, there was an interview of Hannu Tihinen, who's now the head of player development or something at the FA, and he's speaking in English about the magnitude of this occasion and being on the pitch. And it was great. And to see how they're sort of really thriving off the back of it, it's given them a proper identity as well, which, to be honest, we'll come on to in a little while. The supposed golden generation, they never had. This is now a name for the team. It's not just the Finland team. They now have a name. It's like one of the American sports franchises or something. It's really, really worked.
So as I say, I've been doing a little bit of moonlighting for with Palloliitto this week, and I know that there's some more content coming that's due to come out any day soon. So I'll put the link to that in the fanzine as well. This was one subject I knew a lot about because I've been writing about this for the last few days, but I was quite happy to pass it on to you in case I just started regurgitating the writing that I've been doing. How about if we have a commercial break? Are any of us wearing our merch today? We're not, are we? It's terrible. Let's have a quick halftime break to shill some merch. We have the Finnish Football Show store on TeePublic. Links in the show notes. We've got the perfect ones right now are the owl design with the Finnish Football Show logo in the middle of it. It's available in blue with white or white with blue. Me and Mrs. W have got one each, and I'll be wearing mine in the market square of Seinäjoki on Saturday and cheering on the boys. The t-shirts are priced around about €17. They get printed to order and shipped out to you from local producers, so you're helping kind of local businesses as well as helping the Finnish Football Show, and we get a small cut of that. And also we have buymeacoffee.com/FFS podcast. So this in theory is a little bit like Patreon, but we don't put anything behind a paywall. We're not asking to you to subscribe regularly. We're just saying if you want to make a donation to support the Finnish Football Show cause, then please do. All donations are gratefully received. They go into the pot, and maybe they'll help us with some of the running costs. And actually connected to the merchandise, Rich, you're running a little bit of a competition at the moment, the fantasy football competition.
So the official UEFA Euro 2020 app, they've got a fantasy football game going on there, and we've decided to have a little mini league that involves very little administration on our part, but it's open to all, and we were suggesting that the winner of the league at the end will send them a free Finnish Football Show t-shirt of their choice. So sign up. We've got there's about a dozen people in there at the time recording, but yeah, if anyone signs up and into our mini league, we'll choose your merch.
I was just looking actually, Rich, while you're talking, and we got 14 members in there. I mean, I must admit, I find fantasy football a little bit dull. But I did put a team together, and yeah, I managed to get my name all sorted out. I screwed that up in the beginning, but that's all straight now. So there's 14 of us in there. I'm there. I can see Mark's there. Rich is there. Are you in there yet, Keke?
Not yet. I'm still working on my team.
Blimey, I did mine in about 10 minutes, and I might have a little fiddle. But the thing is, making podcasts is kind of keeping me busy. So I'll probably have the same team that I put last Sunday. That will still be the team I have by the end of the competition, regardless of subs. But yeah, join in, Mark.
Yeah. Just I guess one more thing, which is that for all those that are listening to this and picking up those little gems of information that's going to help them build their own previews and their own stories in their own websites. In the finishfootballshow.com website, there's also a page dedicated to how you can support us. As Mark said, we're not asking for any money, but if you've used some of our content to get a little bit wiser, go ahead and click the donate button there.
Very good. Thanks, Mark. Let's move on to the next subject. This is a topic that is very close to Rich and Keke's hearts, so we're going to have to be quite strict on the amount of time here because it's about the Finland kit. And now, one of you shared. I think it was one of you. There's so much stuff coming at the moment. I saw somebody shared a story that the Finland kit had been ranked quite highly among all the Euro 2020 kits. Should we start with that?
Yes, there's been a poll released. Obviously, a lot of these shirts were released in time for when this tournament was supposed to kick off. But they've been on their coat hangers or what have you since then. But there's been a recent poll, and people seem to have fallen in love with the Finland home jersey. As you can see, I'm sporting the away jersey at the moment, which is my own personal favourite. But yeah, the white home jersey with the the dark blue stripe that sort of gets lighter down towards the bottom has scored quite highly. I must admit, I wasn't too sure when it was first released, but I've grown to absolutely love that shirt now. It's and I think with the number as well, with the Palolito numbering and branding, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I think there's been people all over Twitter, a lot of Rangers Football Club fans after Glen Kamara shirts been asking where they can get them and all that, and Palolito have done their bit by adding English language to their official shop. So yeah, you can get over there. You don't have to worry about all your translations, and you can buy your Huuhkajat shirt. But yeah, as far as they go in the tournament, I think this home one especially has been quite well received.
Go on then, Rich. This is you. You're the one with boxes and boxes of football shirts in your garage.
Yeah, well, like Kika said, it's all. I mean, everything like this always brings out content ahead of a major tournament, and yeah, the Finland home kit anyway has been scoring really highly. I think that the Telegraph did one the last couple of days. That it was in. I think it was third. The Italian journalist Tancredi Palmieri, he did one. His list and the Finland one was number one, and in Finland a tweet like that suddenly generates articles on blog sites and all that. So it's again, it's really difficult to get, because I've had a lot of people asking me about getting the home kit in the UK, and it's sold out in most regular sizes everywhere. You can get the odd one in a small or extra small, but yeah, pretty much the only place you can get it is the Palolito shop. It's the away shirt, I think you can buy. There's a few places still selling it in most sizes in the UK, but it's weird because you know, in the past, Finland, when they had Adidas and now Nike kits, they were all very standard template stuff. They were all the same. Yeah, I mean, especially the Adidas ones. They were the ones that all the big teams wore as well. They were just in white and blue, like the one that Mark's modelling now. I think that was the 98, 99 home shirt. I think that was.
It's massive as well. It's like an ice hockey shirt, even on me now at this age.
And these were all template shirts, and they're all identical. They change the colours, but it was just like this. Whereas Nike now, for all the dull kits they've given Finland in the 6 or 7 years they've been doing them, this time round every kit they've done for every country is bespoke in one way or another. Whether it's the collar, the design, some of the trim, and the Finland one, yeah. When, like Kaka said, when it first came out, though, I think a few people were kind of. It's not one of those that. I think it annoyed a few people. It's quite divisive in some way, but maybe, like, you know, we've had that extra year now, and when you look at some of the other kits that some of the nations have that are either dull or a bit too controversial, this, you know, it speaks on the pitch. The players look great on it, which is another thing. You know, it looked all right on a design, on a hanger, on the old press release, but when the players started turning out in it looked, the D's B's, it looked really good. And it's nice, you know, that people are wanting to buy it. Of course, I think it's sold quite well in Norwich as well, but that's for another podcast.
Where would Finland be without Norwich?
In Finland.
Yeah. I found the shop. I put the link there. It's called the Finland Football Store. So they've branded that quite nicely. FinlandFootballStore.fi, but I'll put the link in the notes. The notes this week are going to be very link heavy and quite light on text because I'm doing this when I go silent and let others talk. My fingers are furiously finding the info for people. So we'll make this as useful as possible.
Just while we're on kits, there's been a bit of controversy this week with the new Ukraine kit that's been released. I don't know if anyone's seen that. It's I think it's Joma is the company, isn't it, or is it Yoma? I don't know. Is it Spanish company? But yeah, they've within the sort of fabric, they've included a map of Ukraine that includes the area of Crimea that Ukraine say theirs and other people say isn't. So yeah, if any of the Nike executives are listening, if they can do a Finland kit next time with Petsamo and Vipuri on it, that would be fantastic.
This is controversial. We're going to be speaking with the Finnish the Russian Football Show, or whatever they call themselves, in a week or so. Let's not start a diplomatic incident.
We'll all turn up in Ukraine kit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I had. So this is being recorded on Wednesday the 9th. We recorded a show last week on Wednesday, and then on Friday and over the weekend, I on my own got together and put out a little bonus pod, because we talked about the Finland song for this competition, Sukupolvien Unelma, which is like the dream of generations. And we talked about how it kind of got us. It brought a lump to the throat or a tear to the eye. And so I reached out to Niila Arajuri, who's the guy that wrote it and performs the song, just to talk to him about it. And again, you can find that probably wherever you're listening to this. If you just look down, you'll see that episode. So line it up and have a listen. It was about 20 minutes, and it was a really nice chat about the song, but also about his family, because he's the brother of Paulus Arajuri, who's sort of one of the surefire starters for the Huuhkajat this year, surely. And talking about sort of life growing up and what led to the recording of the song. And I think, as I described it the other week, it's got that kind of folky, dancey, Avicii kind of sound to it, with a little bit of the Finland fans singing or chanting Suomi, and it's just got this kind of patriotic lyrics there as well. And I was able to actually ask Niila how he felt to make 40-year-old British men cry with his song, and he was quite touched, actually. So you know, I think he said it's the best kind of feedback you can get, because it shows what his song is doing. And he said that he'd been told that there had been Finnish men who'd been at work in the office during the day, and the song had been played, and they just burst into tears in the middle of the office. And we all know that Finnish men are not normally quite so expressive with their emotions. So he's definitely got something there. And I can imagine, when the games are on, I said to you, I'm planning to be in the market square watching the Denmark game on a big screen, and you can imagine the song being played just before or just after the game, and the whole crowd kind of getting a lift from it. So thanks to Niila for joining me the other day, and good on you. And let's use it to kind of get everybody worked up a little bit for the game on Saturday.
I'll tell you what, if the players we've mentioned are having any trouble building up their teammates for the game on Saturday, all Lukas needs to do is whack that on the changing room stereo, and I'll tell you what, they'll be ready. Even as a non-native speaker of Finnish, you know, like it's especially with the excellent work they've done on the video as well. Where, you know, it just can't fail, but just to get you inspired. It's honestly, Niila's done a fantastic job there, and the guys who have been involved in the video as well. Well done to them, because I can't stop listening to it. I'll tell you what, I know and I hope that it becomes an anthem for the summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Mark, we're going to come on to Finland manager Markku Kanerva in a minute, but I also mentioned to Niila that this phrase in there, "Viva la revolution," and I explained to him that, you know, you coined the phrase revolution, and he didn't know that. I don't know if he's planning to offer you a co-songwriting credits and a slice of his fortune that must be coming his way. You might just have to go for the glory there.
I have many offers for a new album. I did actually. I would say I was slightly disappointed, because when I listened to the pod back, you forgot it was Ari's book.
Yeah, I did. I know. Sorry, Ari. I remembered it afterwards. Mark's frozen on us there. Yeah, Ari Virtanen's book. So yeah, sorry about that. It came to me half an hour after the interview, and I didn't have it written down beforehand. It just sort of popped up in the conversation. So maybe we should move on and talk a little bit about the progression of managers over the recent history. Rich, earlier you mentioned Roy Hodgson being the manager when Booby the Eagle Owl made his appearance. Do you want to start talking us through that process a little bit of the managers?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that gets discussed, obviously, with the various tournament guides and things that are talking about Marco Canerva and his background. I think a lot of people know he was a teacher in between his playing career and becoming a manager. But so Roy Hodgson was the Finland manager for I think the second half of the previous day, or the 2000s. There was a spell of managers going through the Finnish national team who, and this is the problem, it's difficult when you're a nation. Sometimes you have to be selective. You can't have a process in place, whereas you might at a club. They had a number of foreign coaches. So they had Stuart Baxter, an Englishman who was in charge of Finland, he then went to South Africa, and he recently had a very awful issue in India. But so there was him. There was Roy Hodgson, who did pretty well with Finland. I think his record was good. They got fairly close to qualifying for Euro 2008. I think it would have taken a final day swing of several goals and had results gone their way. But he was actually awarded essentially the equivalent of a knighthood for his services to Finnish football. I mean, it's Roy Hodgson, everyone knows, but he actually learned the language. He made the effort to integrate himself into the country. He was also he became very much a Jari Litmanen fanboy, to the point that he then signed him when he was 37 for Fulham. Litmanen, of course, didn't play a single minute and got knocked out by a goal kick in training. But he left. Richard Moller Nielsen was manager at one point as well. Then Miksu Patalainen took over in 2011. And Miksu, of course, everyone knows, is a former player, did a lot in England and Scotland. His reign was, I think, mediocre, would be putting it mildly, but he was very rigid with the Christmas tree. The highlight of the reign was a draw against Spain in 2013, where Teemu Pukki scored the equaliser there in one of the most one-sided draws ever. And when he left 6 years ago this week, actually, after they lost a World Cup, Euro 2016 qualifier to Hungary, Canerva took over as caretaker after that. And it was all very drab. It was the same players doing the same thing. It was Einstein's theory that you expect different results because he played the now renowned Christmas tree formation. Now, when he left, there was I can't think of the best way to describe it without involving lawyers, but the FA at the time was run by Pertti Ajala, a former goalkeeper, and he formed a very small committee with him. Jari Litmanen was involved. They were very much pals, and they decided, there was an open recruitment for the Finland manager. I believe Stuart Pearce applied for the job as well. They selected Hans Backer, who had been, he was a Swedish man who worked at Notts County. He'd been the manager of New York Red Bulls, and he presided over the 2016, and I'll call it a reign of terror, because in 11 games, Finland won 0. They were dreadful, absolutely bereft of everything. And of course, he stayed until the end of 2016, and Finland had already started their World Cup 2018 qualifying group with, I think it was a defeat. They were 2-1 up at Iceland in the 90th minute and lost 3-2. And that really spelt the death of him. He left. Canerva took over again, but he was offered the full-time job. He was a company man. He'd been the under-21 coach when the team reached the Euros in 2009. The spine of that team, Toivio, Sparv, Pukki, Jukka Raitala was there. A number of players. I mean, most of them had gone on to win a lot of caps for Finland. And this is where that kind of continuity by error, they made, if you look in the wrong place enough times, you'll find what you're looking for. He's brought that team together, and everything, you know, they don't have the outstanding stars that they used to, that we'll talk about. But he's made them a team. He's made them bonded. These are people who know each other inside out. It's quite simple. You know, he's no Guardiola. He's no Bielsa. He's no, I mean, we talk about the revolution. You know, he's not going to win awards for his tactical prowess, but he's made them a team that can beat, you know, a lot of their peers. The Nations League helped. I'm a big fan of the Nations League for the confidence and the momentum it gave Finland. And obviously, I'm a big fan of his because he's an Arsenal fan as well. But he's what he's done is just, it's difficult to put into words, because he's taken Finland where they've never been before, with players who probably wouldn't have got in the team of the late 90s on an individual basis, of the early 2000s, but they're a team, and everything about them now going into this tournament is about unity, is about strength. It is kind of old-fashioned English values in there. You know, they're all playing for each other. But yeah, what he's done since the end of 2016, I mean, he's been in charge for nearly 5 years now. And, you know, this is consistently, you know, a strong Finland team, which, you know, the likes of which we haven't had. I mean, Hodgson got them to 33rd or something in the FIFA rankings, but this is over a 5-year period and got them to a tournament. Everything he gets, every accolade, every award, every nomination, he absolutely deserves.
Mark's rejoined us now. Mark, I did continue from where you dropped out by just saying that it was Ari Virtanen's book. It was Oi Suomi. I've put a link in the show notes, and if Ari's listening, I hope that goes some way to make recompense. But why don't you talk a little bit about this word you invented? And where does revolution come from? What's the name about?
Yeah, so the revolution was just, I mean, I think so. If you're not familiar, actually, even before Rive Marco Canova took over for this stint, the one that got us qualified for this tournament, which was 3 years ago, he actually stepped in as caretaker manager after Miksu Paatalainen, who you may know from Bolton, back in the early 90s. He had a kind of a disastrous managerial campaign in charge of Finland, because we had what was universally agreed to be the easiest qualification group in our history, where we had Hungary, Romania, and Northern Ireland as the key teams for us to beat. And we all basically assumed that this would be the one that would get us, you know, to a major tournament. I think it was after 5 or 6 games, he got sacked after a 1-0 home defeat to Hungary. And not everybody remembers this one, but in that qualification campaign, Greece was the other team in that group, I should say. Kanerva took over for the last 4 games, 1-2, drew 2, and I think we ended up as only, was a point or 2 points off actually qualifying. You know, and so after having this disastrous campaign in a really easy group, Kanerva took over and still almost got us qualified in a really short space of time. Unfortunately, the Palloliitto, the Finnish FA, didn't decide to extend his contract at that point, and we went in and brought Hans Backe, which ushered in an era of 7 defenders. They're the kind of tactics that would make Scotland blush for the amount of defenders that we get on the pitch, and then that lasted for a year. We didn't win a game. We were at probably the darkest, lowest point in our footballing history. I think we were past 100 in the FIFA rankings.
This was around the time we launched the Finnish Football Show, because the 5th episode was entitled "Is this the worst time to start a podcast about Finnish football?"
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And what Kanerva did when he came in, he just returned everything to the basics. So, you know, he set up a simple 4-4-2 system, much in the style of Leicester City in the sort of 2016 time when they won the Premier League at a long shot. We stayed really tight in the middle. We hit everybody on the counter attack. We had 2 sort of wide forwards, and then we had, at the time it was Sparv and I think Perpa Heitma probably retired at about that time. So it would have been Alex Ring who held the middle before Glen Kamara came on the scene. And you know, but he developed this really simple, straightforward system that was keep it tight in the back, bide your time, counter, with pace and with effective through balls, get Pukki and Pohjanpalo in behind. And it started to work. It started to work like a charm. At the same time, a lot of what we called then senior players, Nicholas Moisander, Perpa Heitamai, Alex Ring, who wasn't so old, decided that they didn't want to continue with the national team or retired. So I think Kari Arkivuo was another one. A lot of caps, a lot of experience. And Rive just he accepted all that, said, okay, if you don't want to be here, it's totally fine. Find yourselves, enjoy the rest of your careers. And then he just built this really simple, straightforward system. And it's it's a play on words. It was a revolution of sorts, because for years and years we'd been trying Christmas trees and 5 at the back and whatever the hell Hans Bakke was trying, which we still to this day don't know. And Rive just came back and made that sort of a revolution that was based around really simple principles and a straightforward tactical approach.
And that name came from his being a fan of Rivellino, the Brazilian player.
Yeah,
that's where it came from originally.
Yeah. He played for Finland in the 80s, if I remember correctly. He also played against Brazil, and Rivellino was one of his one of his favorite players at the time.
You're a wordsmith, Mr. Hayton, and it's
everybody gets one.
Yeah, but not all of them end up in print and in song. So Okay. Do you know what? We're actually kind of towards the end of the show. Rich, you mentioned this right at the beginning about the legacy of Finland's golden generation. This was the generation that Roy Hodgson managed, and what was it that you wanted to say? Maybe give people an idea of some of the players, because if you're following the Premier League as it was back then, these were kind of well-known Premier League players that all happened to be Finnish all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it was over the course of probably the sort of mid to late 90s going through towards the end of Hodgson's reign. And it's something that comes up in most of the quotes or most of the tournament previews, is people talking about Jari Litmanen or Sami Hyypiä, because they're the two outstanding, the two Finns who've won Champions Leagues with their clubs, both pivotal members of their teams. Neither of them played at major tournament. Some of the players who played in Finland's squads around that time, they had an embarrassment of riches in some positions. I mean, they had Jussi Jääskeläinen and Antti Niemi, both in goal. Players like Teemu Tainio. I mean, Mikael Forsell scored so many goals. And yet, again, the team, the way everything worked, didn't bring the best out of him despite the number of goals he scored. Litmanen played if he could walk. He got in that team. He got so many caps. And I mean, we've jested, and only recently has someone matched him of playing competitive games in 4 decades. And there's an Andorran centre-half who's just managed that feat as well. And, he was this larger-than-life figure, Litmanen, on the pitch. He had this influence and this power that if he was undroppable, until he was dropped, basically, until his career came to an end and someone finally told him, this is it. But yeah, I mean, again, they had the players, and most of those players would walk into this team on an individual, quality basis. But there was very little of the team ethic that there was there. Everything was kind of, oh, well, this player's available, let's try and shift this around to get him in. There's none of that now. And if you fit in the system, you're there. Whereas, when we look back and at the YouTube and the clips of these teams that had the odd good result, they turn up and they beat Belgium, they get good results against Germany or Netherlands or something like that, and yet they wouldn't do it on the games where you'd expect them to win. And yeah, because they weren't a team, they weren't a proper team, and it's difficult looking back to think, like, how did they not make Euro 2008 or whatever, and we all laugh about the own goal that cost them a spot in the playoffs for France '98. I mean, it probably saved the humiliation that Hungary got. I think they lost 10-1 to Yugoslavia after qualifying for that. But that's something that's come up in the last couple of weeks. But it's difficult when you kind of reconcile the difference. And everyone talks about Jari Litmanen. I mean, in the mid-90s, we didn't have Sky TV in my house. So we didn't want to have Premier League. All we had was Champions League on ITV in the 94-95 season and the 95-96, where Jari Litmanen was really one of the best European footballers. Certainly, and now we look back and think, well, Teemu Pukki is probably going to break his goals record this year. And we've got a team who play, who fight, who run for each other in a way that team didn't do. Obviously, the slightly larger tournament helps, but that in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's relevant.
Okay, any other players that you'd like to add to that list of people that Rich has mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Johansson, he was smashing goals in the Premier League, up in Scotland as well, smashing goals in. He had a decent career. You had Petri Passanen, who had a very, very stellar career in Germany. I think he spent most of his time, but he was a cracking player. Towards the end of that generation, and sort of maybe not quite making it into this generation, but you had Mika Vaarinen, who played in Holland as well, who was another fantastic player. But as we've mentioned, this team seems to be such a team and more than the sum of its parts, whereas that team had amazing individuals who, for whatever reason, just couldn't seem to get it together as a team.
I think you're clearly forgetting Shefki, right?
Yeah.
The crazy thing about that generation was, even the guys on the bench, even the guys that were sort of backup, also had sort of semi-decent Premier League type careers. They managed to hit it at the top flight, whether that was at cult status or whether it was kind of a journeyman status. They were still sort of there and thereabouts in the top leagues across Europe. Valakari was another one, so he's not by no accounts is he a household name, but he played top flight football.
And what about a friend of the show, Aki Rihilahti?
And Aki Rihilahti was legend at Crystal Palace.
Staying on the list.
Yeah, so I think that squad had an incredible depth to it. I think it was obviously a different era of football. I think they were all really skillful players. They were all technically good, and they were all physically fit. But I think when you look back at the particularly the management that we had at around that time, it's fair to say that we always had an old head. Or a sort of traditional way of playing. We never had somebody that could, just organize the team in a way that would be a surprise. Finland, you could always predict what Finland team how Finland would play, because it would basically be on how fit Jari was. If he was in great form, he would have been up top, it's playing off Forssell, and if he wasn't fit, he'd be dropped into a midfield five.
He'd be there nonetheless.
Oh yeah.
I mean, those years after Hodgson, they were sort of the wilderness years, really. I mean, after what Hodgson managed to do with that team, and I don't know if I'm right in saying, but I seem to remember that it was our old mate Woy who suggested Baxter for the job after he recommended him. After he recommended him. So, but yeah, I just remember us sort of limping through the Baxter era, and then and then everything that came after. Mixu again. I remember. And Mixu, he was pretty much a legend himself when he played for the national team, and I remember there was games where there was such venom against him, asking for him to go out, to be sacked from his job as manager, and then. Christ, I don't know what that Hans Backer experiment was all about, Jesus. But thankfully we can forget all that.
But if you think back to that the Baxter and Mixu time, we had Moisander was in his prime. He was captain at Ajax and then went to Serie A and to the Bundesliga. We had Perpa, Perpa Heitamai, who was a regular in Serie A. Who would we have had up top?
Roman Eremenko.
And Alexei.
All gone.
Yeah. Well, but Alexei as well. Alexei Jr. would have been there at that time as well. He was still probably Motherwell, somewhere like that, or Kilmarnock. I would have thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had talent at that point, but Baxter was, I think, a colossal mistake, and unfortunately, I think everybody wanted Mixu to succeed. We all wanted it so much that that we believed in the Christmas tree probably for about a year longer than we should have done.
He's still working anyway. His Hong Kong team are currently in Bahrain for World Cup qualifying, so he's not unemployed. That's the main thing.
Okay, I think that is a good time to wrap it up. We've gone long, as per usual. What about if we just each give our thoughts on what we're hoping for the Finland team in the Euros? What do you think, Mark, would be good for Finland? A good result out of this whole competition?
I think the way that the groups are structured this time, it's the top two go through, and then it's 4 from the 6 groups. The third place in 4 of the groups. I reckon 4 points definitely gets you through. 3 points might even still get you through. So that's either 3 draws or a lucky win, or if we can throw a draw and a win in there, I think we can get something. These teams, Denmark, Belgium, Russia. There's not an A-League team. We're not playing Germany. We're not playing France. We're not playing England. I think each of those, Belgium are a tough team, but this is as weak as they've been.
They are ranked number 1 in the world, so.
I know, but if I look at that defense, I look at that defense, and I think these guys are going to press Finland, and I think Pukki's just going to stand just a yard the other side of the halfway line and wait for 1 or 2 through balls, and we'll do exactly what we did to France. We'll catch him on the break and just pop him. So I think the chances. So good is we get out the group. I reckon we can do it.
Rich?
Similar. Portugal got out the group last time with 3 draws and went on to win the thing.
So we're going to do a Portugal then?
Well,
no, we're going to do a Greece.
Yeah. One of the statistical people suggested that Finland had 0.1% chance of winning the tournament, and I immediately thought of the old Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance? Honestly, I have this fear that Finland will come third in the group, but not be one of the 4. I think it'll be. I think they'll either get 2 draws, or they'll. I do have this feeling somehow they'll beat Russia. I know I've said
so
it.
two draws and beating Russia. That could put you.
Well, I think two draws
win the group.
or 2 draws. Denmark and Russia, or that I have a feeling they might beat Russia. But there's part of me that just feels it'll be part of that romantic first story that they'll get into that last game with Belgium and they'll get knocked out because of goal difference or results elsewhere or something like that. They'll end up watching through to the end of the group stage and not knowing if they're through or not until probably a day or 2 later on.
That would be painful, wouldn't it?
It would
just
be
hanging around,
dragging it out for 2 days
crossed,
because that's how these things go.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
someone has to suffer.
Keke, what do you think?
I'm going for 9 points, I think.
Of course.
It's not Eurovision. Come on.
No, like I think all these other mobs, they're underestimating us. Do you know what I mean? They think we're just turning up there and we're happy just to be there. No, mate. We're going to give it a good crack and see how we get on, But yeah, realistically, if you can beat Russia, I know they're in their own backyard, but they've got an aging centre forward. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we can beat Russia, nick 3 points there. By the time the Belgium game comes round, Belgium might already be through and not need to worry too much. They'll be looking at which side of the draw they go on. Allah when they played whoever it was it England when we played them and in the World Cup, and so we might get a 0-0 or something against the number 1 team in the world. So I'm confident.
I've been thinking for a while that not that this is what I want to happen, but that there's kind of steps. Like let's get the first goal. Let's like scoring the first goal at the Euros, and then let's get the first point, and then let's get the first win. And kind of, I've been trying. I'm the opposite of you, I think, Kiki. I've been trying not to build myself up too high too soon, but now I kind of feel I'm all wrapped up in your enthusiasm. I think we can do it. Realistically, I reckon 4 points would be doable, and 4 points would be good, and probably would be enough. But where they're coming from, I don't know. And it's like two away games, and then playing the world number one in a neutral ground.
I'm not going to make any big predictions on the. I do think we can get out of the group. But I'm always terrible for predictions because Keke always knocks me on my ass. But what I will predict is I think Pudu Soiri is going to do a Poborski. So I reckon he'll go down a blistering run, beat 3 players, smash in an absolute worldie, and then end up in the Premier League next season.
Very nice. That on that positive note, I reckon it's time that we wrap up, and then we've got the job of getting this thing published. Remember, listener, follow our Facebook page for content coming directly from us. We are picking up followers all the time on the Facebook page. You can see our podcasts and blogs and what have you on there. You'll also find a link to our Facebook group where we share all manner of other stuff. We've got the Instagram page, Finnish Football Show. We've got the YouTube channel, and we've now got a TikTok. What 40-somethings are doing with it, left alone to run a TikTok channel, I have no idea. But maybe over the next few weeks, we'll get some interesting bits and pieces to share on there as well. So if you want to, you can reach out to us, any one of us, on Twitter. Rich, who are you?
I'm at Escape to Swarmy.
Mark, who are you?
At FC Swarmy.
Keke?
I'm at Keke Mülleri.
And I'm at Explore Finland. And until the next episode of the Finnish Football Show, thanks a lot. Goodbye.